smaller, more compact anomalies happen in the northern hemisphere. So the likes of North America, Europe and things like that, they've got smaller pockets of positive anomalies. And these are the things that we want to concentrate on, the positive ones, not necessarily the negative ones. And I don't mean that from a spiritual feeling type of thing. I mean that from purely an understanding of science where you have a positive field and you have a negative field. So when I'm referring to the positive and the negative during this lecture, I will be doing it purely on the understanding of energy and not feeling. Okay? Now, when we look at the southern hemisphere, we actually have larger pockets of highly concentrated magnetic anomalies. Whereas the northern hemisphere, as I said, we get smaller pockets, but they're nice, tight little pockets. Now, this, for instance, is where I'm from. This is Ireland on the left. You can see the outline there. And, of course, the UK, where Steve is from. Now, there are some anomalies that ripple through England, for instance, the positive ones being in red, through the south. Midlands, not so much. There's a lot of negative there. And there are two strong anomalies that pass through Scotland, one smaller than the other. Ireland, of course, on the left-hand side, we've got 3 or 4 pockets there. And it might be worth mentioning here that on the left, just off the shore of County Kerry, is a huge anomaly. For years, for the past 30, 40 years, this is the place, the Kerry coast, that people go down to looking for the star watch because they see a lot of strange things. That's why. Now we're seeing these magnetic anomalies. Yes. Yes, yes. What we're seeing here is a positively charged magnetic anomaly off the coast. We're using satellites to see these. Now, I will be talking about where you can get this from. It'll be on the discs. This is free. You can do this at home so that you can check where you live or your county, and you can see where are the best places.
Are these twisted magnetic fields?
These magnetic fields, yes, they will morph and move, but primarily you're going to find them around the same places. There is some shift within a 24 hours, expansion and contraction. But for the most part, what you're looking for is going to be the positive. The densely packed, as you can see moving into the nanometer range there, the purple, you wanted the more densely packed magnetic positively charged anomaly. Purple is good. Purple is exactly what you want. Yes. Oh, sorry. Now, these areas of densely packed magnetic anomalies, this is where we find a common thread that starts weaving its way down through the multiple fields of investigation, which comes under the umbrella of the supernatural, which, of course, ufology is part of that, whether we like it or not. And what we tend to find also is going to be cryptozoology, UFOs, hauntings, of course, and these strange, scary places that people have talked about, that people go missing. But what we also tend to find within these areas is a huge level of deceit within the phenomena. And this is what Steve was talking about earlier, is trying to understand that, because with these particular anomalies and the things that are utilizing these anomalies, they don't want you knowing the truth. This has always been the case. And we know from our investigations, I use exceptionally strong cameras and long-range cameras. I can even use cameras that we can see craters on the moon. But when we go to these particular areas that we engage in communication, the moment the cameras are brought out, nada, because they do not want you to know the truth. Okay? So keep that in mind.
What's the they?
Sorry?
What is they?
Well, you see, this is the thing. We can give it a name, But that name has changed over the course of millennia. It's the same phenomena, different mask. So I never get lost in giving it a name, because when we give it a name, then we get lost in what that is. We identify with that. So I prefer they, it gives it a clean slate. So, and he has identified new clusters of areas of disappearances. And our own work has looked at the global phenomena and discovered extremely conservative figures for people who have vanished, and I have to say, have never come back in the last 20 years. 4.5 million people in the last 20 years. That, people, is the population of New Zealand. And I can tell you this, these are exceptionally conservative figures. The figures are much, much higher than that, but they're lost because of the way that we record. Number one, the disappearances, and many of the disappearances aren't recorded. There are areas around the world which are troubled areas, which are those disappearances just we just don't see.
Or they refuse to record.
Or they refused. I can't even find these reports in Ireland. Now, what I got to say, folks, of course, David Paul Lees has identified Yosemite Park. Although I care to call it Yosemite. What we see here is more densely packed electromagnetic fields here to the south of the park. This is something that we see all over. Where David starts identifying the pockets, we also see a connection to these magnetic anomalies. Now, there was a new pocket that he was speaking about recently, which was the Three Sisters Wilderness up in I believe it's Washington. And again, what we see here is this densely packed area here, which falls into that particular key area. So this is a commonality that we see through this, where we get the pockets of the disappearances, and where also we get the reports, of UFOs, cryptoids, unusual activity. We tend to find these clumped together. No, that's magnetics that we're looking at, magnetic anomalies. Sorry? These are satellite. And this is actually a filter that's applied over the top of Google Earth. It's free for everybody to utilize and can work from. That's exactly right, yes. It's very, very easy. And what we can do is adjust the filter so that you can have the complete magnetic anomaly. I tend to have a look at, I tend to push the opacity down a little bit so that I can see the landscape behind it. It's much, much easier to follow. I'm actually not quite sure how often they are updated, but that'll be something that we can work on and look at. We are developing an app for this specific thing, so keep an eye out for that for the cell phones.
But what does it mean, though? Does it mean there's like vortexes?
That's what we tend to find in these particular areas. Yes.
Vortex changing.
Well, the thing is, if you look at what's being reported, suddenly I'm working with yourself, we have a conversation, and I'm walking along and I turn around and you're gone. It's that fast. And yet there's no sign of disturbance, there's no blood, there's no sign of anything, just gone. And in fact, I did speak to one of the park rangers off the record, and he said that he saw one of these things. It was like a shimmering effect, an upright shimmer that happened, and it actually frightened him. I've spoken to a pilot as well who did mention something similar while he was hiking, and again, it was something that he had to speak off the record because of his career.
Those purple areas are also another volcano.
Not always connected with that. Yes, what we tend to see here, the Three Sisters, are the three mountains, but there are other areas as well that are not connected with the volcanoes. There are earth disturbances there and everything else going on, quartz and all the rest that we need to account for. But setting aside of what within the Earth is actually creating them, these are the key areas that we look for to identify areas that we find more activity in. Now, this is the Great Smoky National Park over in North Carolina, where we have, of course, the Brown Mountain Lights and everything else. And as you see, with the Northern Hemisphere, you tend to get these pockets coming down through. And these are the Blue Mountain Ridge here, and you'll see along here very tightly packed magnetic anomalies in there. So those, the deeper purple, are the ones that you're really looking for when you're going out to these particular locations. And I probably should point out, folks, if you're going out to these locations, it's on your head. It's on your head. We're not responsible should you disappear. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Now, using the anomalies, we can find the true seat of the phenomena. And this was a very, very interesting point I wanted to bring forward here, because this is Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta is up here. And as you can see, we were talking earlier there about volcanoes. There we have the volcano here, the white here. But the seat of the phenomena is not the mountain itself. It's actually this anomaly that horseshoes around it. This is where you'll find them, not here. So that's something, if you obviously you have access to a lot more anomalies, and I could spend years in America alone searching all these places. And that's why we're devising this app, so that you guys can help us, so that we can start tagging these particular areas and start understanding which anomalies are presenting more phenomena. Okay? Now, another interesting point, because Steve, of course, was showing us the triangle that was built by us back in 1968. Rendlesham Forest in the UK. Nada. There's no positive magnetic anomaly here. This indicates to us this was man-made. It was man-made or it was fake. But I'm going to go with man-made because of what we know already about what was built, the triangle and everything else that was coming in. Rendlesham Forest, no magnetic anomaly. Well, Rendlesham Forest, you see, there was this craft that landed in the woods beside. The craft in Rendlesham Forest was man-made. When we find these other, in here, you will find other craft that is made by, and I'll use the term them. Okay? Here, there is no magnetic anomaly. This is an indication that this was a man-made landing. Interestingly, though, what we do find is that there are certain countries that do not allow this particular mapping system to be used. Yes, they're covered. They're covered. We do know those magnetic